Hey everyone, this is Lisa from TRW, and in this video I'm going to show you the basics of the Silhouette Studio print and cut feature. Now this is something you can do in all versions of Silhouette Studio, and I think it's a really great tool that you can use. So for this example, I'm going to be using it to create basically like care tags for our garments or our products or whatever we're selling. If you are a Silhouette user, then you're already all set to start this. If you're someone who uses the larger cutters like the Graph Tag, the GCC, or the Roll-In, I would consider even looking into Silhouette, maybe even getting their smaller cutter, the Portrait, because this feature is super awesome. So let's go ahead and get started, and I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. Alright, so when we're working with print and cut, we basically have to understand the difference between cut lines, print lines, that sort of thing. So right here, I have my care instructions typed out. I already typed them out. This top one I used Malaysia script, and then these are all CAFRAS normal. I just set them up. Now, if you look closely, because this is pulling up as a text, these lines are actually overlapping. Now the cool thing about doing print and cut is I don't actually have to weld these letters. Because I'm printing them and I am not cutting them, then I'm all set. So we're going to go over and I'm going to take this and I'm going to just right click and group. That way I have them grouped together, they're going to be treated as one. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw my box around it from my little care instructions card. I'm going to do a rounded rectangle. I think the rounded corners look a little bit nicer. So let's go ahead and set it up. And so right now, if you look, my card is pretty big. It's 7.5 inches wide. So let's go ahead, I'm going to select both of these by dragging my mouse and grabbing both of them. And then up here in my quick access toolbar, we have this icon right there. That's to center. So I just centered my text inside of there. So let's go ahead, I'm just going to scale this down until it's about a size that I like. I like this about 4.5 inches wide, and we're all set to go. So now what we're going to do is we're going to do the setup for our design to do our print and cut. So you can go kind of both ways right here. We can go through the cut panel first, or we can go through the page panel. I'm going to set up my cut lines first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select everything that's in black, which is what I'm going to print. Let's go to my send panel. And you can see as you're in the send panel, it has this little box around it, this gray box. We're going to go over to our action and we're going to do no cut. So check it out. So now we have this bold line right here of the line on the outside is going to be bold. That means we're going to cut it. But because our care instructions is not bold, that means it's not going to cut. So one thing to keep in mind is you can choose specific parts of your design in Silhouette Studio to cut and not cut. And so that's what we take advantage for our print and cut. So let's go over here to our design, and now we need to tell the software we are doing a print and cut. So when we do a print and cut, we're looking for registration marks. So we have to modify our page or our work area to tell the software, hey, this is what we're doing. So let's go over to our page panel over here at the top of the right panel. We have our page size. So let's go ahead and we're going to do custom. So we're going to do 8.5, hit tab, by 11. Because we're going to print this through our printer. So this is going to be an 8.5 by 11 page. So we have that set up. Now we need to turn on our registration marks. So second tab is grid. This third tab is registration marks. So you may or may not have accidentally turned on your registration marks in the past. A lot of times we'll go through that and accidentally turn it on, and then when we go to cut our vinyl, it'll say registration failure. That's what you have turned on if you get that. So if we go to our registration marks, we're going to do type 1, Cameo, Portrait, Curio. And so when we have something like this, you're going to see a couple things in there. We have this black box, these lines, and this gray area. So these black boxes and lines are what print out on our page, and that's what our cutter uses to align it. And then this gray area is just a safe area. They don't want you to put a whole bunch of stuff in there, otherwise it's going to mess with the registration. So I'm going to shrink this down to about 3 inches so I can fit a little bit more. And now I'm going to take this, I'm going to select both of these, hover over, and you can see my mouse is a plus sign. You can see that right there. Click and drag, and I'm going to make a copy. So we're just going to do 2 over here. So let's go ahead and bring this over. And actually, when we do this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to group my instructions and my outline together. The reason why I'm grouping it now and not before is that I wanted to make sure my line cut and my text did it, so I had to keep them separate. So let's go through, grab both of these, hit Alt, bring this down. Now let's grab both of these, hit Alt, bring it down. So now I've made a bunch of copies pretty quickly. So now we're going to get ready to print. Let me just go over to my Send panel and check it. So you can see we have our thick lines, our text is not bold. So now this is printing just like you would anything else from your computer. This is going to print from your printer, not your machine. Your Cameo does not have a secret printing compartment that you don't know about, okay? So we're just gonna go through, I'm gonna do file print on my computer, and then we're gonna go from there. Here's my print. So if you look, the squares did not print, just my text, and I have my boxes in the corners here. So we have one last thing to do before we set up is we are going to put this on our cutting mat. Now, we have to use our cutting mat with our paper because you can't cut paper without a cutting mat because there's nothing to stabilize it in the back. So let me go through, and we have one last step in our software. We're going to go back to our main page setup, and we're going to turn on our Cameo cutting mat. So there we go, we are all set. So I'm going to put this on the mat, and then we're just going to go to the Send panel and choose our setting, and we're going to cut it. Now my biggest piece of advice when cutting paper is that paper has so many variances to it, whether you're cutting cardstock, printer paper, all that fun stuff. So find a setting in Silhouette Studio and start doing tests. My personal preference is to always program my own, so I just do tests and then have my own for exactly what I need, but that is up to you. So I'm going to go ahead, load this in, and then we're ready to cut. So here's my cutting mat. Here is my print. So you'll see if you look closely, you have your little registration mark there and there, and then you don't see any overlapping lines because it's all printed. So let's go ahead, I'm going to turn this a little bit so I can see it. And so I'm going to set up my piece of paper right in the corner of my cutting mat. So you're going to make sure you have it as straight as you possibly can. It has to align as closely to perfect as you can get it, because it's going to use these marks to align it. Now if you're not setting it up perfectly on this mat, then that's how you get it misaligned in your registration marks. So let's go right here. I'm going to line up this edge of my cutting mat right there, and you'll notice that this roller needs to go over one because I'm using a cutting mat. So we're just going to drop that over there. So let's go through, line it up, and then load. So this is where you want to test material settings that you're going to be doing. I'm going to be using the cardstock textured heavy, the 80-pound option, because I'm using a pretty thick piece of cardstock. Again, this is going to vary based on what you have. So let's go ahead, I'm going to send it. And so it's registering it. So there's a little laser in here looking for the registration marks. And the fact that it's still going is good. That means it's registering. If you have it misaligned, it would have stopped right here. Good. So now it's adjusting and it's basically setting up for my cut. So we're going to let this cut and then see how it goes. So we are done. Let's go ahead, unload it. And now we can just take our paper, peel it off. Now this setting, this is just a matter of getting your settings correct. Make sure you're testing them. And then I don't want these to bend, so we're going to take our cutting mat, put this flat, and roll our cutting mat off of our paper. We're just going to go through, hold it down. So now we have them nice and flat. And let's go ahead and repeat it for this one. Just be careful when you get to the end that you're still rolling it off of your paper. Cool. So now we're all set. We have our little cards. And now we have some easy care cards using the Silhouette Studio print and cut feature. Really awesome. It's a great way to also get those detailed designs that are hard to cut. We can print them and cut around it for these little tags. So a really easy project, something I think incorporates perfectly into your custom apparel business or if you're selling finished items. I just think it's really awesome. So if you have any questions, make sure you comment below. If you like this video, don't forget to give us a thumbs up.
If you want to see more videos, tutorials on Silhouette Cameo, Silhouette Studio, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any more tutorials. And comment below. Let us know if you have any questions or what you think.